Oh, Mr. Estes is recognized.
Well, thank you, Chairwoman. And thank you for our, that sounds good, doesn't it, Chairwoman, as you're sitting there. Thank you for our witnesses as well for being here to discuss this phenomenon that is quietly reshaping American life to the detriment of seniors and savers. I know I want to stay focused on ESG. I know there's been a lot of distractions around various other topics that we talked about, whether it was a bailout of pensions where the trustees had failed to be held accountable for their fiduciary responsibility. As a result, taxes are increased for single moms in my district. We talked about, critical race theory, climate change, talked about potential shutdown, even though we're focusing on appropriations bills this week, a host of other things. But I want to talk about ESG. It's become really clear that ESG investing hurts seniors and other savers by privileging non-financial factors over positive financial outcomes. It's the opposite of fiduciary responsibility. Individuals have entrusted their money to corporations and firms to be stewarded towards a financial end, not some intangible goal in which they have no say. The record high inflation that we've seen since Joe Biden became president has underscored the importance of sticking to this critical mission. Finances are tight as inflation has grown more than 17% since President Biden took office. Kansans, including seniors on a fixed income, are having to stretch their dollars to spend nearly $1,000 more each month on the same goods and services than savers have seen inflation eat away at the funds they've set aside. Americans should be able to trust that institutions stewarding their hard-earned money are doing all they can to provide the best financial return, not leaving anything on the table in exchange for advancing activist goals. I've been concerned about the growing impact of ESG for a while, and last spring wrote an op-ed for The Hill on the threats imposed by ESG that I'd like to submit for the record. Chairwoman.
Without objection.
Thank you. Treasurer Oaks, how can a citizen already suffering from Bidenflation take control of their investments and protect them from ESG activism?
Thank you for the question. So one of the biggest challenges is that the risk to their retirement is not just through ESG designated funds. What's happened is many large asset managers have signed on to pledges that commit them to push ESG with all assets under management. And so they'll use, for example, a passive index fund and push ESG by using engagement with companies. And this is what people don't see. This is why a lot of people don't talk about it, because they don't understand what's happening. You'll have large investment managers go into a large oil company, for example, and say, you need to reduce your greenhouse gas emissions, you need to create a plan to be net zero by 2050, and oil, by the way, you need to cut oil production by 20%. Who does that impact? It's not just the investors in that fund. It is not just the investors with that particular manager. And in fact, it affects the entire marketplace. That's what we're talking about here. These are funds that you have to have a massive amount of money to drive an agenda through the capital markets, and that's why these asset managers have signed on to these pledges, these commitments to drive ESG and use all of their assets under management. That's why this is so dangerous. That's why it changes the economic system. That's why our economic freedoms are at risk.
Well, thank you. And, beyond just the impact on individuals, ESG activism is affecting everything from energy to agriculture to national security. Undoubtedly speaking to climate activists, President Biden declared on the campaign trail that he would end fossil fuels, unquote. In pursuit of this goal, he's undermined American energy independence, going so far as to drain the Strategic Petroleum Reserve in a bid to bring price relief to consumers suffering from the results of his policies. Putin's invasion of Ukraine temporarily added a spike on top of the already soaring prices caused by President Biden. And now with the war in the Middle East, there's a risk of prices again climbing higher, all in pursuit of answering the activist calls to end fossil fuels. Mr. Isaacs, as you have shared, America continues to rely primarily on fossil fuels. If the United States continue to make it difficult for domestic energy producers, where will we get our energy from, and who will benefit from that change?
Yeah, we'll likely get our energy from people that don't care about us very much, and they'll control the price, like OPEC cutting production right now to the benefit of Russia, to the benefit of OPEC, to the benefit of Iran, that's fighting this war and funding this war on terror right now, or funding the terror, if you will, but for no environmental benefit whatsoever. If we do end fossil fuels by 2050, the temperature differential by 2100 using the UN Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change's model would be less than 1/10 of 1 degree difference. It's 0.0892 degrees. That's no benefit. That's no benefit, but the costs are astronomical. We completely throw out our economic prosperity. And I think we need to thank our forefathers for what they've done, because if you look just 2 generations ago, we started on this path to economic prosperity, and in result, world leaders in environmental protection, 80% reduction in pollution in 5 decades is incredible. We're #1 when it comes to access to clean and safe drinking water.
That's great that American innovation has done that. You know, if the United States wants to pursue ESG goals, it certainly should not do so at the expense of ordinary American savings, much less our national security and global competitiveness. I yield back.